Welcome to Deal to Heal with E. James podcast. On this podcast, my guest and I will discuss topics and ways to help us to heal in every area of our lives. I believe that everyone can live a life that is happy, healthy, and whole. So I'm on a mission to help people to deal, heal, and fulfill. Deal with your problem, heal from the pain, and fulfill your purpose. Thanks for tuning in. Let's get to it. All right. Welcome to the Deal to Heal with E. James podcast. I am your host, Ernest James, and I believe that everyone can and should live a life that is whole, healed, and healthy. And therefore, I'm on a mission to help people to deal, heal, and fulfill, to deal with your problems, to heal from the pain, and to fulfill your purpose. Thank you guys once again for tuning in to the Deal to Heal with E. James podcast. If you haven't already, make sure that you check us out on all of your podcast listening platforms, and also that you are checking us out on our YouTube channel, which is the Deal to Heal Podcasting Network. Again, that's the Deal to Heal Podcasting Network, where you will find the Deal to Heal with E. James podcast that you are currently watching or listening to, as well as you will find our sister podcast, which is the Girl Dad, excuse me, the Girl Dad Discussions podcast. Both of are available on our YouTube channel, again, which is the Deal to Heal Podcasting Network. So make sure you guys go and check us out there. Also, our product of the week, as you guys know, we are a self-sustained podcast. And the way we stay on the air is by bringing you amazing products for you to purchase. And so our product of the week is our Purpose Journal and our Purpose Planners. Because I believe that we are the journal in order to keep track of where we've been and where we are, as well as plan for our future. So you guys can get your copy of our Purpose Journal and our Purpose Planner on Amazon. The links will be in the description. So make sure you guys go there and check us out there as well. But today, just like any other day, we are blessed with a guest, Miss Elizabeth. How are you?
I'm great. Glad to be here.
Good. So first of all, let me say thank you. Thank you for being here, because you could have been doing anything else with anyone else, but you're here with me and my listeners, and we definitely appreciate it. And so we're going to jump right into this thing. Elizabeth, do me a favor, introduce yourself to my audience and let us know a little bit about who you are and what it is that you do.
Yeah, hi. So I'm Elizabeth, and I'm a somatic transformation coach. I have a membership community called Body and Soul and Body and Soul Sanctuary, where I do this work that I call somatic alchemy. And I love that you mentioned the purpose journal, because what I've found in my work is that when we heal the symptoms of trauma and heal through our body, our purpose is what ends up coming out on the other side, no matter what the conditions are, whether it's mental health or a physical disease. And so that's what I help people do, is to transform their symptoms into superpowers and unlock their purpose through their healing. And I love it.
I love it. I love it too. Great, great, great. We're definitely going to jump in some things, because definitely one of my things, big things that I do talk about is I'm a mental health advocate, because of the things that I've been through mentally, that I've had to deal with, and blessed to be on the other side of it. I definitely talk more about those things, and that's the whole reason behind this podcast and all of that, is to bring hope and help to people that are struggling, physically and mentally, but definitely mentally. So Elizabeth, let's go back. Let's go back into your story, because you shared with us, sort of what you do now. But who was Elizabeth before the
Yes,
work, right?
yes.
So I always say that there's always something. There was a version of us who we were before, and there was an incident or something that happened that kind of changed our
Yes,
lives, right?
yes.
And then as a result, finding the purpose of that thing reflection of
Yes.
the work that we do now. So who was Elizabeth prior? And then
I
what
love
was
that.
that thing that happened in your life
Yes.
that kind of changed your life and then led you to the work that you do now?
Yeah, I love that. I have a mentor who talks about the word crisis, and apparently it means crossroads. And so I deeply believe in that, the way that our crisis turns around our life. Yeah. So, I mean, I've been thinking about the answering this question. Like, there's the more obvious way, which is that a few years ago I almost died from a medical injury, and that was extremely severe. But the truth of it is, like, going through everything that I went through in that also woke me up to the ways that I grew up as a child, who was extremely sensitive and intuitive, and was kind of honestly like a bit disillusioned by a lot of the things that I was experiencing in our modern culture that don't make sense. Like, why are people so closed hearted, and why are they, why this and why that, and not really getting those questions. So I was really pursuing the healer's path for a lot of my life. And when I went to college, studying sociology and understanding people and philosophy and those kinds of things, and traveling abroad to other cultures, definitely always like seeking out sort of the missing pieces for, like, why is reality the way that it is. But then when I had this big health crisis, I was already training in my clinical training, which is about reprocessing trauma through the body, um, which for me, finding that training was a part of the journey as well. I'll just take a step back and say that, because as a really sensitive person, a lot of things I experienced didn't start making sense until I received my first table work sessions from a somatic practitioner as a client, and started to realize that there's a way to bring things back to the physical body that were missing, or certain like ways that I'd felt in my physical body that just didn't, like, I couldn't fix it with thoughts, right? I couldn't fix it with just cognitive and traditional counseling or therapy. And it started to bring sort of like the mystical or spiritual side of myself and the side of myself that was a human just trying to human on the earth together. And so I decided to pursue that as a clinical training myself. And then it was through about, I would say, the fourth year of that training that I had the medical injury that nearly ended my life. And that's where I learned, I really appreciate what you said about deal to heal. I think it's, a lot of people understand this idea that, like, you have to make a choice to heal. You can't be passive in your healing. But I learned that that's the case even when things are extremely dire, because there was a point there where I could have decided to die, or I could have decided to live. And I wouldn't have blamed someone who would have chosen the other way, because when you're in a lot of pain, there's no shame in that. Sometimes it's easier just to let go,
Yeah.
Um, but I decided not to, and that was my turning point. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and I wanna touch on that a little bit, right? Because you mentioned about you said you wouldn't blame someone who decided just to give up, right? And so, as being a person who has survived suicidal ideations, right, and knowing, now with suicide growing, the numbers growing, and a lot of people are having conversations about it, but I think a lot of people are having conversations about it from the outside in, right? And so even myself, before I got, into that position where I was feeling so down that I started having suicide ideations, I had my own thoughts about, suicide and people who, who died by suicide, and, how they might be thinking or not thinking and things of that nature. And so we're
Mhm.
having these conversations a lot more now, but I don't think that people are doing enough work, right, to understand what happens when someone
Yes.
decides to take their own life. It is not a decision that is taken lightly. You know what I mean? And it's not a decision that I would say is people who deal with suicide is not dealing with it from a point of I just want to take my life. It's not a conversation of whether live or die. It's a conversation of pain. It's a
Yes.
conversation of if you're in enough pain, whether
Yes.
it be emotionally or physically, that you cannot take anymore, then it
Yes.
puts you in that space. And a lot of
Yeah.
people don't understand it. And I sort of say, I hope you never get to understand it, because I never want you to be in that space where you can say, oh, now I know. You know what I mean? I would
Mhm.
rather you just take my word for it. You know what I mean? Because everybody don't come back
Yeah.
from that space, you
Don't
know?
go so far that you have to go there. Yeah. Mhm.
Yeah, yeah.
Mhm.
And so, you mentioned about, about not feeling bad if someone, someone decided to let go. And I think that's important that, even we had kind of have that conversation because, again, you get to it's about pain, and it could be a physical pain, it could be a mental pain. And, in my experience, when you just get to a point where you're in this such an amount of pain that you can't change, you can't take it away, you can't, do anything about it. Like you can't control it. You just kind of got to go through it. And it just
Yeah.
sometimes it gets to a point you just like I don't have what it takes to within myself to keep going. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And so I
Yeah.
just think that's a
Yeah.
conversation we need to have more often
Yeah.
because now we're having the conversation, but again, we're having it from the outside in,
Mhm.
and
Yeah.
that's why I'm more vocal about my experience now because I want people to understand like people who died by suicide was not, they would say, well, they weren't thinking about their family. They weren't thinking about the people that they left behind. And those were my thoughts too, until I was in that space. And I
Mhm.
realized that no, they do think about their family. I was thinking about my family. I
Yeah.
was thinking about the
Yeah.
things that I was going through and how now in the space that I was in at that time, dealing with depression and everything that I was dealing with, um, how it was affecting my family and how I showed up in my family. And so
Probably
that
made it worse,
part
I
of
would
it,
imagine even. It
yeah.
probably just added to the pain because, this is why I study somatics, and I think people, when they learn a little bit about how our nervous systems work and our bodies work, it's
Mhm.
kind of a relief to realize it helps take that burden of the guilt off to recognize, oh, this is actually my body going into a survival place to try to
Yeah,
manage this pain. And it's not, yeah, it's definitely not personal. It's definitely an extreme state of suffering that I think is also not personal to the people going through it because we live in a culture where there are so many conditions of trauma that
mhm.
it's actually kind of a miracle to me that, so many people are actually still kicking with how much trauma
Yeah.
that we're all carrying.
Yeah, yeah, and it's so true, and that's why I said I talk so much more about my experience now, because I want people to know, even like you said, it's not personal, and then just some of the trauma that we go through, it's not personal, some of
Yeah.
the losses that we have, it's not personal, it's life, you know what I
Yeah.
mean, and
Yeah.
unfortunately, sometimes the road gets a little rough, you know what I mean. But
Yeah.
it's not a personal road. Like you're not the only one on that street. Like it's a highway. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? Like everybody's traveling the same way, and some of us, missed the pothole, and then some of us didn't. You know what I mean?
All the
And,
more reason for us to, what's that phrase? Like walk each other home, right? Like we need to get on each other's team when we start understanding these things and stop shaming them. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So in
Yeah.
your practice, which somatics, what are some of the bases like what you that you start with, with
Mhm.
persons who may be dealing with a certain level of trauma that they've made it through. You know what I mean? Just
Yeah.
like to get
Yeah.
started, what are some of those things for them to even
Yeah.
recognize? I would say even before the physical part of the somatics, but really just
Mhm.
recognizing like where they are and how somatics connects with the body and how the nervous system works. Tell us a little bit about that, just how we can even get started before should I
Yeah,
say, like the pre-start. You know what I mean? Like, what are some of the things that we should know and
for sure.
understand before even
Yeah.
getting into somatics?
Yeah, well, I mean, one of the basic principles that I love is that the idea is that like our physical body is always trying to heal itself,
Mhm.
just like in the same way that nature knows what to do, right? The same way that a flower knows what direction to grow towards the sky, like there's a blueprint inside all of us that is part of the, you could say, divine design.
Yeah.
And so that's the good news, is like there's a way to heal where we don't have to think of ourselves as kind of like something that's broken that needs to be fixed, but actually what if we just could kind of get out of our own way and let that do the work, and like let the body show us what it needs, which also includes the emotions and the thought processes, which kind of get stuck in loops sometimes. But the
Mhm.
body is like such a direct way to sort of help those to unloop and make it less personal, because you can just feel it and not be as identified, if that makes sense.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, and one of the things that I will tell people too, some ways to notice, because some people have big T trauma and some people have little T trauma. Some people have, oh, I had a big car accident or a big betrayal or something, someone died, a very major thing. But then a lot of us have this sort of more nebulous trauma that's like all these little
Mhm.
things, like maybe emotional neglect as a child. They didn't even think of it as something bad that happened to them because they didn't get hit or have an like aggressive abusive situation, but something that was supposed to happen didn't happen, almost like that flower that like grew with not enough sunlight and
Mhm.
they're like doing okay, but they don't realize there could have been another option if they had better resources and they could have a more thriving experience. So I think that's another reason I love somatics, because you don't have to come in like, I had this thing happen to me that I need to heal. You can come in just kind of being like, I feel like there's something more for me and I don't know how to get there. I feel stuck around relationships, or I feel kind of mild depression and I don't know why. Like, you don't have to be able to point to the origin. It might also be codependency, or it might be that you feel like you don't have a sense of self. You're always following other people, what they
Mhm.
want. There's lots of ways it can present. Maybe life feels heavy to you instead of exciting. Like, that was a big one for me, is like even just figuring out how to earn an income or get a degree, like just things, like it was like everything was hard because I didn't have certain tools like that were part of my psychological development until I got them. So life feeling heavy is another like way you can say, oh, I could use some help in just helping my body, my nervous system get free of whatever's weighing on it, and then see. Because and this is the hopeful message I like to tell people, is like, you don't have to like invent something. If you're like, I don't know
Mhm.
who I am and I don't know what's going to make me happy, like we all have that inside us, just like
Mhm.
that flower has it. So all you got to do is get help unburdening yourself, and when you do that, it's going to show up in full force, and you're gonna be like, oh my god, there's this thing that I love, I didn't even know it, you know.
Yeah, yeah. And I wanna touch on something that you said too. Well, one I'll touch on this. I want to touch on one of the things that you said about there are times that there are things that you are supposed to get that you don't
Yeah.
get, and you're moving. You know what I mean? You're still growing, you're still going, but you don't realize the effect that that thing that you didn't get, how much it affects you, and so that resonates with me really because I know I was talking to you a little bit off before we started recording was my story and how I got into podcasting, which is my connection with fatherless daughters. And one of the things, in my earlier work working with fatherless daughters, one of the things that I would say to them, they would be like, I'm fine, like I'm okay, like I was raised without my dad, and my mom did this or whatever, and I'm okay. And I'm like, you can't really say you're okay when you have no measurement to measure it against, right? You can't
Hmm.
say that there was no effect because you don't know what the other side could have and would have been if
Yeah.
things were in the way that it was supposed to
Yeah.
be. Like
Yeah.
everyone is supposed to be raised by two parents. It takes two parents to come together to create the child. And I always say it takes two parents to raise the child. And so that's how it's supposed to be. And you are missing a critical part of your development when you miss a parent, father or mother,
Yeah.
and a lot of
And the
times
village,
because,
for that matter. I was
yes,
gonna say, and
yeah.
the village for that matter, all the aunties and the uncles, we really need the village too. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, we need everybody, right, to kind of pitch in, and when you're missing some of those elements, it does have an effect on you, whether you know it or not. And it's not until we start doing the work and whether through somatics, and I know I've gotten a lot into personal development and things of that nature. So really, getting in contact with myself and who I am, the things I enjoy. It's not until we start doing that work of that inner
Mhm.
person and discovering who we really are, that we can even acknowledge that, yeah, I'm doing okay, but there are some things that I'm missing. There are some things that, I could be
Yeah.
doing so much better had I had these
Yeah.
things in place.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. Yeah, it's
yeah,
so hard to see that really because there's this weird phenomenon where we kind of are drawn into the same familiar situation again and again. So even
mhm,
if you like grew up, but you might still attract like a romantic partner or friends that are also kind of negligent or whatever the issue, whatever the pattern is. And so you
yeah,
can't really, it's hard to see outside of that reality. But when you see other people that have something, I think that's a common thing too, is like to feel envious or feel like, well, they can have it, but I can't. But that's where you get to deal with the mindset piece and say,
mhm,
well, maybe actually there's something that I'm missing, and it's not that I don't get to have that. I just need some help to get there.
yeah, yeah. I want to touch on one other thing, because you mentioned about the body's natural defense mechanism, should I say, to heal itself and to try to
Yeah.
fix what's wrong. There's two
Yeah.
books I want to mention. One I think is more popular, which is The Body Keeps Score. Right,
Yes.
everybody hears about
Hmm.
that one. But there's another book by an author, Dr. Anita Phillips, called The Garden Within, and
Oh.
that book for me was just like amazing, right? Because even the pictures in the book, right? So she talks about how the body, as a organism, or whatever you want to call it,
Mhm.
how much it connects to nature, right? And
Yes.
how it is,
Yes.
is like your emotions and the way that your nervous system is set up, how it's like a reflection of nature and how different things in nature is set up. And so she
Yes.
kind of walks you through, your emotions and how you feel, and reflective to nature and how it connects. And like it is, the book is amazing, right? It's
I
amazing.
need to go
And
read that.
one of my
I
one of
bring
my
that all
favorite books,
the
yeah,
time.
one of
Yeah.
my favorite books. And so when we're talking about, because I believe that one of things that I started hiking, right? I started hiking not too long ago. And
Mhm.
one of the things that I think that we miss sometimes, especially now in this era of moving and grooving, and in the big city, we miss that connection to nature, to be able to get grounded and to be able to just be outside of the hustle and bustle of the city, but to get back into just in connection with nature. And so with somatics, how much a part does somatics connect you
Mm.
back to nature as well? And like, even if you were doing a somatic exercise outside, I mean, that might even be a better thing, I don't know,
Yeah.
but how
Deeply,
do those
deeply,
kind of connect?
deeply. Eventually, they're like the same thing, really. I mean, because somatics is tapping into our nature, right? It's like what it does, the more that you experience it, is that it takes all the layers of sort of conditioning and the ways we've kind of boxed ourselves in. So not only have we removed ourselves from nature coming into buildings, but like a lot of our mannerisms and things, like even our like regulation of our temperature and all this stuff has shifted from the days before when our ancestors just lived outside and were moving and hunting and gathering and eating off the land. And usually, I know for me and many of my clients, like the more that we sort of uncover the trauma, which is it's also, you could say, the nature trauma of being removed from nature, our original mother, right? And so there's like that feeling of missing something that's even older than like a human mother, right? There's like a greater planet mother. We're like, where is she? Like, and like the more that we like do this work, like, I mean, I don't know, like I'm like ready for my off-grid greenhouse in the forest, like, because like I just want more and more and more of it, and that's also what I experienced in my when I was coming into recovery from that, because I didn't share, but during the medical, after the medical injury, my body was basically went into a severe autoimmune response and became ill with a disease that was not curable through Western medicine. But I treated my body like an ecosystem, like you said, like, And I was thinking about it like the way that some indigenous people have talked about the land, like the rivers are the blood and the, everything. Like, what if this is like a whole world in itself? And it just needs, how people are learning how to rebuild the soil and to clean the water up and clean the air, and the way people are working on the environment, we can work on our physical bodies in a similar way. And it's interesting because, there's both physical and emotional traumas that our bodies are holding. And so there's the emotional component, but there's also just the way we've been removed from nature and how that in itself creates a stress in our body, whether it's like unhealthy things in the food we're eating, or just, again, like the negligence example, missing certain
Mhm,
ingredients
mhm.
that we were designed to have, like a certain amount of sunlight in our eyes every morning,
Yeah,
and things
yeah,
that seem so simple. But like our bodies, even though we're modern humans, our bodies are this design that's hundreds and thousands of years old, that's
yeah,
still looking for the same nutrients that it's not getting from the earth. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. I love that, and I think that's important for us to recognize too. It's just like you said, if you think about your body as as the earth, and you think about pollution and pollution of the water and things of that nature, when we're sometimes and I'll even speak for me, like I'm a bricklayer by trade, and I
Mhm.
work a lot in the steel mills and things of that nature, right? And so just the air that I'm breathing at that time. And if you think about your body as its own planet, and I'm breathing in these different toxins, those toxins are now going throughout my planet. You know what I mean? And in my
Yeah.
blood, which is my river system. So now it's going throughout, my
Yeah.
body. And so we think of it like that and start to say, okay, there are times that you need to recalibrate, should I say, maybe reset yourself, or making sure that you are restoring some of those things that unknowingly you may have been adding to the stress of your body, because of some of the things that you're doing. Again, where I work, we have to wear gas masks and things of that nature. And it's like there's a reason for that. So
Mhm.
if you're going to an environment every day that you have to wear a gas mask, and we don't always wear it, you know what I'm saying? Then you have to really think about, okay,
Mhm.
what are you putting into your body? And then now your body is carrying that physical stress along with the
Mhm.
mental stress and things that goes along with it, and
Mhm.
like I said, I
Yeah.
think that we are missing a huge component when we don't take the time to kind of disconnect,
Mhm.
from this
Yeah.
modern physical world. And
Yeah.
definitely when you start talking about social media and things of that nature, because
Yeah.
one of the things you mentioned earlier about is some of the traumas that we don't recognize when it's just like little things. And
Mhm.
when you think about social media and the constant little negatives, you know what I mean? Might not even be a big,
Mhm.
a big whole page or whatever, but just the constant little negative, like if someone had a straight pen and they just constantly just poke you a
Yeah.
little bit,
Yeah.
over
There's a
time, it's like,
there's
ow, you know what I mean?
yeah. No, there's a metaphor in the somatics world of like the nervous system almost like a swimming pool, and you start putting balls in it. And we're resilient. We can deal with stress. We're designed to be resilient, but at some point, if you're putting the balls in the pool faster than they can clear, at some point it's going to be so stuffed that like that water can't move. Everything's just stopped up in there. And that's also what I was thinking about when you're talking about suicide, because at that point it's like there's not even the breathing room to try to
Mhm.
make a different choice, or to recognize I have a choice or I could do something different, because it's like something has been sort of overburdening my system for so long now, without reprieve, without
Mhm.
release and
Yeah.
relief, that it gets harder and harder to remember that we have choice and that we can make a different choice. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And a lot of times, even with that, it's that the presentation of the choice, right? Because again, sometimes you find yourself and you're like you don't even recognize like the choices that you may have in that moment. But when someone like yourself come, or a family or a friend or loved one, to say, hey, kind of reopen your eyes to the possibility of that life that you still have while you're here. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, things are kind of rough right now, but let's think about this
Yeah.
thing here.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And because that was
Yeah.
kind of my story. with, when I was going through my suicide ideations, was to focus on my daughter, and being able to focus on her and make sure that even if I don't have the strength to say, I'm gonna stay here for me, if I can focus on her and stay here for her, then at least that now gives me a choice of something to
Mm.
strive for, and so
Yeah.
when we're even in the spaces where we can't see it, when we are presented by, again, family, friend, whoever, with this thing that says, okay, let's focus on this, let's put our energy
Yes.
here, it can
Yes.
definitely make a
Yeah.
difference.
Well, you just described one of the beautiful principles of the work, actually, because that's part of the idea is like when you're overwhelmed with negativity, instead of trying to battle it, what if you train your attention toward the thing that actually feels good, that gives you a sense of
Mhm.
purpose and motivation, true intrinsic motivation, and even if it feels like that is so much less, there's so much less energy going that direction than in the going down the tank, if you just start feeding it little by little,
Mhm.
and this is actually where neuroplasticity comes in, right? Because somatics is all about retraining the neural pathways in the brain and nervous system. They're all like, yeah, we're used to going that direction that's
Yeah.
shitty. So even though it's shitty, it's familiar. Those are like well worn roads, you know, but we're trying to like actually kind of take the cars and be like, we're gonna drive them in this direction, even though the road is kind of like we have to bushwhack and create a new path over here.
Yeah.
And the way we do that is by pursuing what is intrinsically motivating, what feels good, like what gives us meaning. And kind of like that gives us that grit and that resilience to be like, I can overcome. And actually what that does is it changes our body, it changes our neural pathways. And you do that enough times, it's like repetitions, like when you're building muscle, but you do that in your brain and
Mhm.
in your
Mhm.
nervous system enough times, it starts to get easier and easier and easier. And before you know it, you're like, it's so much easier to drive down that road. What happened to that person that thought it was easier to go that way? But it's because you really stuck at it, retraining your brain.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. You're speaking my language now. You start talking about purpose and fulfillment and all of that.
Yeah.
When I was going through God gave me this phrase, right? Because I was searching, and I was trying to find my way, and God gave me this phrase, and it says, "Pain births purpose, purpose births progress, and progress
Hmm.
is the evidence that God is at work." Right. And so a lot of
Oh,
times we
amen.
are in the midst of our thank you. We are in the midst of our pain, and we're like, okay, what's the purpose of this? And when we find the purpose of it outside of ourselves, and we
Yes.
start to react on that purpose, and then because of we're focusing and we're putting strength and putting motion behind this new purpose, there's things that starts to happen, right? And so if I even take myself in my journey, when I thought about, excuse me, the pain of the fact that I was attracted to fatherless daughters, and every woman that I ever talked to was a fatherless daughter, and in my heart, I said, well, what can I do to help this, this different. I can't even say the word now. What can
Take
I do to help these young ladies that I keep coming in contact with, right? Demographic. That's what I was trying to say. There we go.
Oh, right. Nice.
So how can I help them? And so I started this page on Instagram called Friends to Fatherless Daughters, right? And so the pain of connecting with these fatherless daughters was the pain. But the purpose was I started this page called Friend to Fatherless Daughters. And I just went on and started talking about, from my perspective of being a father, girl dad to brother to five sisters, just all the things that I thought, from my perspective, that would help, the fatherless daughters. And so that was the pain, that was the purpose.
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
progress started after that, after I started doing it, when someone called me and said, would you like to be on my podcast? And I had never done a
Mm.
podcast, and so I did that podcast. Right after I did that first one, I ended up getting called for like seven more, and eventually that led to this podcast. And then this podcast again, now we're on 200 and something episodes. And so again,
Yeah.
that pain birth purpose, and the
Yeah.
purpose birth the progress, and the evidence. We on 200 and some episodes. You know what I mean? That's the evidence
Yeah.
that God is doing
Yeah.
something. And so I
Yeah.
think that when we are able to process our pain,
Yeah.
whether in the middle of it or after coming out on that other side, we really
Hmm.
begin to see how we find that purpose and the things that we're doing, and realizing that the things that we went through was not just for us. You know what I mean? Like, okay, I went
Hmm.
through it, but I didn't go through it just for me. I also went through it for someone else.
Yes.
You know?
Amen. Yes.
Yeah.
There was a prayer that I made in the midst of my near death experience when I was really sick. And it was God, universe, let let what I'm going through be a gooey cocoon, like as a metaphor for metamorphosis and the caterpillar, what it
Mhm.
goes through in the cocoon before it becomes a butterfly. Because I was like, this is hell. Like, this is hell. This is so painful. And I don't know what to do. I don't know how it's going to go. I don't even know if I'm going to survive. But may what this is someday be like the soil for something to grow out of. That's
Mhm.
something better, right? Like,
Yeah.
and that's the alchemy. And that's why I use the word alchemy and the somatic alchemy, because, and that's what's so amazing about somatics too, is because in a way, like, that cognitive understanding is the last step. Like, that
Mhm.
ability to look back in retrospect and be like, oh, now I understand why that happened. But there's a way we can be with our pain and sort of let go of the thought spirals and literally just hold our body and, like, talk to the parts that are in pain, whether it's heart pain, whether it's stomach pain, whether it's joint pain, whatever it is,
Mhm.
or panic or anxiety.
Mhm.
And it's very much like almost like doing parts work, but we can do it with our body, almost like our body is this ecosystem of parts, and it just needs healing. It just needs to be heard. It just needs to be soothed, or given respect or permission to get mad or to
Yeah.
cry for as long as it needs, or whatever, and there's a way that, like what you talked about, so beautiful, because when someone's left to the pain on their own, it can go in a really bad way. But when you know
Mhm.
that the pain is being held by a greater purpose, and that's where I think faith comes in. It doesn't matter what spiritual tradition you are. There's like just the way that nature, the way that we trust that the sun's going to rise every morning. There's a greater pattern that's holding the process. And when you can put your faith in that, then you don't like hold the pain away, and you can go into the pain and you can watch it literally transform,
Yeah.
like you said, into purpose, into progress, into something else. It's
Yeah.
powerful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love it. I love it. Elizabeth, before we get out of here, before we close out, I want you mentioned it earlier about your membership program. Tell us a little
Yeah.
bit about that.
Yeah, I'm so excited. I started it just a year ago, so it's fairly new, but it's been amazing. And I shifted out of about 8 years of just doing one-to-one work into working in a group. And it's called the Body and Soul Sanctuary. And I take my members through a kind of like the metaphor we've been using of like a plant. We start by building the soil of the nervous system and bringing safety in. And we go through all the developmental stages that a person goes through in order to evolve their identity or heal a particular pain point over the course of 12 months. And people are receiving not only the direct support, the one-on-ones that I used to give, but also now we're getting to witness each other and uplift each other and be like on this epic sort of hero's journey together as we take our individual pain through like this initiation and through this like journey together to get to the other side. And there's something so powerful about community and witnessing each other in that's more than what I could have done just with one-to-one, coaching. And so that's what I'm up to now, and I'm loving it. Yeah.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. Community, and I always talk about community. Community is so important when you're able to connect with your tribe, with your right, your people. You know what I mean? I think we
Mhm.
all have our
Mhm.
people, and it's just a matter of finding our people. And when we do, it's such a transformative event in our lives that we don't might not even recognize it right away. But when you connect with the right people and start to build that fellowship, it changes your life like dramatically. So everyone,
Yeah.
I invite everyone and I encourage everyone, find your tribe, find your community, whatever that thing is, whatever that thing that brings you joy, put it out there or go out there and look for it, because there's a whole lot of people that's in that same space. Is like, hey, I like this too. I talk about my when I started hiking. I went on my first hiking trip, and it was five or seven of us. I think maybe seven of us. So I started this little group, this little messenger group with the seven of us in it, and we did a couple hikes, and I kind of opened it up to everybody, and now it's 130 of us in this group. You know what I mean? And so like,
Wow.
you find your people. Once you connect with them, you realize that you're not the only
Yeah.
one. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
And there's something so gratifying about helping the person that's just a step behind you to go through what you just went through, and they make it easier for them because they're not alone on the journey. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I love it. I love it. Elizabeth, I want to thank you so much for being on. I want you to have the last word. I want you to leave us with a word of advice or, information, however you feel, right? And also with your social media handles and things of that nature, where we can find you and follow you.
Mm,
So I'll give you a couple of seconds to think about that. To my
mm.
audience, thank you guys once again for tuning in to the Deal to Heal with E. James podcast. Make sure you guys are checking us out at our website, which is dealhealfulfill.org. Dealhealfulfill.org. Hopefully soon we will get our makeover, because it is kind of outdated, but that's where we are. You know, that's where we are. Again, that's dealhealfulfill.org. Also, make sure you guys are checking out my personal website as a speaker, to come out to speak or to do a workshop at your school or organization. That is ernestjamesspeakslife.com. Again, that's ernestjamesspeakslife.com. I also will, in the descriptions, all this information will be in the description, but also my new link tree will also be in the descriptions, where you can follow me and find out more information about some of the things that I have going on. Um, Also, good and bad news, right? So we got ebooks by ejames.com, which is where my ebooks are. Several ebooks that I've written, including the Core Four, which is the core four values that every daughter should get from her father. We talked about my connection with fatherless daughters. That was one of the books that came out of that space. And my other book, one of my other ebooks that is doing very well right now, which is Forgiving Me, the four-step guide to self-forgiveness. That is also available at ebooksbyejames.com. The good news and the bad news. The good news is right now they are still available. The bad news is they will be going away soon. They will be going away soon from ebooksbyejames.com. They are currently still there, but we got some information that's going to be coming soon, and that's going to be going away. So make sure you go to ebooksbyejames.com in order to get your copy of my ebooks while they are still available. Um, Also, deal2healtees.com. That's deal, the number two, healtees.com, which is our inspirational t-shirt line. Put some inspiration in your situation. Wear an inspirational tee and be inspired all day. That is our tagline. Make sure you guys go there and check out our inspirational tees, as well as our podcast merch, which is our t-shirts with our podcast logos on it. There is one for the Girl Dad Discussions podcast, as well as one for the Deal to Heal with E. James podcast. And make sure you go to deal, the number two, healtees.com in order to check out our inspirational t-shirt line. Last but not least, over the last couple of years, I've been blessed to be a part of a organization called the Forgiveness Mission. And what we do, we have free virtual workshops every month. They bi-monthly. I'm sorry. We have free virtual workshops bi-monthly, where we talk about everything surrounding forgiveness, forgiveness of self, forgiveness of others, forgiveness of the world, even forgiveness of source, right? And we just really believe that forgiveness is a big part of one of the things that's missing in our world today. And so you guys can take part of our free workshops by going to forgivenessmission.com to sign up for our free workshops. Again, they are bi-monthly. So whenever you're listening to this, either one just ended or there's one coming up. So again, go to forgivenessmission.com in order to sign up, or go to Eventbrite and look up Forgiveness Workshop sponsored by the Forgiveness Mission in order to take part of our free virtual workshops. Elizabeth, once again, I want to say thank you so very much for being on. Thank you for being our guest. I want you to have the last word, so the floor is yours.
Oh, thank you. This has been such a sweet discussion. If you want to find my work, you can look up my website, www.bodyandsoulsanctuary.com. There's also a free community you can join if you want to sort of get into some of the work a little bit and get a taste of it. And there's a link to that on the website. YouTube handle is entering the stream. And the final message I want to leave people with is just that you're not broken, and it doesn't matter what it is you're dealing with, a chronic illness, a mental health challenge, a relational challenge, whatever it is. I've just seen so many miracles happen, and there's a way out. And just start by having faith in that, and be curious about where the breadcrumbs are going to show up in your life to help you find the way through. You don't have to do it alone. So yeah, we're all in this together. Let's walk each other home.
All right. And we can't end to no better than that. To my listeners, thank you guys once again for tuning in to the Deal to Heal with E. James podcast, where our mission is to help you to deal, heal, and fulfill, to deal with your problems, to heal from the pain, and to fulfill your purpose. Thank you guys once again for tuning in into the podcast. Until next time, you guys be blessed. Thanks for listening to the Deal to Heal with E. James podcast. Remember to listen, like, subscribe, and share. This episode has been brought to you by Deal to Heal Teas. Put some inspiration in your situation. Wear an inspirational tea and be inspired all day. Let's go to dealtohealteas.myshopify.com. Remember, our mission is to help you to deal, heal, and fulfill. Deal with your problem, heal from the pain, and fulfill your purpose. Thanks for listening.